Awesome. So welcome back, ladies and gents. This is episode 3 of the First Customer Club podcast. I'm Luc Scott, the host, and I'm blessed today with our special guest and my friend, Scott Howard. Scott, how are you doing today, buddy?
I'm great, and I'm super excited that you're excited. It's always nice to feel special, and I'm happy we're recording one of these conversations. I know we've probably had about a dozen of these over the last years, generally around this topic.
Yeah.
So it's fun that we can share it with the rest of the world.
100%. Yeah, we usually do these topics off air, but when the record button on Zoom is like right there, why wouldn't you capture it, right? So I'm always taking a lot of notes from our talks.
Yeah.
And, we're talking often about finding first customers, keeping first customers, growing first customers. And that's exactly what this podcast is about. So today we're going to be talking specifically about starting and growing high-tech companies, some of the differences maybe in high-tech environments as opposed to a regular tech startup. I've got a lot of experience in new business development, but Scott, you have probably 3 times as much experience as me in this new business environment. So I thought you'd be the perfect person to bring on. I know you're a self-proclaimed revenue engineer. You're a business development guru. You consider yourself a nerd, and I consider you one too. You've been building businesses in high tech for a long time. In recent years, I know you've done things in blockchain, cryptocurrency, mining, and most recently in AI. I wanted to give you a chance to share a few words about your background before we jump into things, and let us know what is a revenue engineer, because I always found that a fascinating term, and you live up to it, buddy.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. Some of it is self-declared, but there's occasional pieces of evidence that I might know what I'm doing in some things. And doing startups and doing high tech startups is one of those. I've gotten to do a lot of them because some of them haven't worked. And as they say, failure is the mother of most learning. And a key to trying to get better at something is putting yourself in a position to fail, which is a big piece of tech entrepreneurship in particular.
100%.
So yeah, I think on that topic, it is looking at this kind of what is a revenue engineer. We even had a little bit of a dialogue on this on LinkedIn, which is probably led to part of this conversation, is the art and science of sales. A huge part of it is being personal, building rapport, having emotional intelligence, and trying to engage with somebody to get the conversation going and understand what the needs and wants and desires are of the other human. And trying to match up to that, and just having some charisma to get in the door and tell the story and get things to happen. And that is a level of art, and that's an art that can be developed like any other art. Beyonce didn't start off as a great singer and dancer. She developed herself with raw talent and being one of the best in the world at it. And same thing goes for salespeople. But the science part of it, the engineering part of it, is there's a structure that you can put around a salesperson in a sales organization that's going to make those artists, those performers, much more effective, and give them a much higher probability of success. And I'll use my Beyonce example. Like, Beyonce's got a whole lot of engineering and a multitude of different types of engineering that go into her brand, her persona, the performance she creates on a stage, that she creates on a screen, that enhance what she has as raw talent and hard-earned professionalism of what she does when she sings and dances. The pyrotechnics going around it, the dancers around it, the production of that is a lot of engineering. It has a lot of science and thought put into it. Like, how do I draw somebody's attention to the right thing? How do I get the right environment for success, for the performance to be high, get the highest possible leverage on it. And a lot of that's that you're, in sales, a lot of that's just your growth hacking, marketing, funnel management stuff that goes into that. It's going to take me 12 touches to get the customer to hear the message, digest it, and start taking the action. I went, okay, how do I get 12 touches without doing 12 dials at random days of the week
Right.
based on the sticky note at the top of my cubicle. It's no, I put a CRM in place. I got drip marketing. I got a cadence that goes through this. I have different messaging sequences that go into that are kind of data informed. It says like, oh, the persona you're chasing responds really well to this white paper, which has this headline, which has this. And so kind of building that engineering around the sales organization and the people in it to help them be successful. So they're not thinking about who should I dial next? What should I say next? Let me try a different format of email copy. Let me make up my own sales deck. And there's room for that creativity. There's room for that art. But if you give them this like press go and get the machine, the revenue engine, it makes those humans way more effective, and takes a lot of the guesswork for both that person who's the salesperson as well as the organization of how many contacts do we need to make our number this month.
Right.
Okay. And how do I drive that and ensure that I get those contacts to happen and I get the most optimal types of contacts happening. And I'm measuring and iterating what's working. I'm like, oh, Scott, as the human, has figured out these 2 words work really well. How do I get the other 9 people in the sales organization to understand that? How do I get that into our machine to go like, oh, all of our emails now should have those 2 words.
Right. Yeah.
Measuring that.
Yeah. It seems like, it seems like that's the goal to get to that point, right? You start to combine art and science. I'm not sure if you would agree or disagree. I feel at the very earliest stages, it's probably more biased towards the art side of things because you don't have enough data to know what works. You haven't landed a customer. You could build a customer journey. You can do all these exercises. You could have a CRM, but it's empty until you put the first few people in there, right? I feel like everything is a hypothesis. You test it, and then you try to replicate that. And there's many different ways to find that first customer because it's not a science. What would you say is the most consistent way to find your first customer? Like, have you found a formula that works in terms of putting your concept, your MVP out there and finding first customers? I know you said something recently where a lot of it comes from relationships, but I don't want to lead you.
Yeah. So it is, the machine kicks in a lot, further down the line, kind of that model of the machine. I got 10 salespeople. We only have 10 salespeople after you have more than 10 customers.
Right.
It's like kind of those first 10 customers. I every time I approach a startup or someone I'm advising or working with, it's like, don't worry about how do you get to $10 million worth of revenue. How do you get the first 10 customers? Most important, how do you get the first one?
Right.
And the first one that you led to it because it's a relationship. Some huge portion of the time, because usually when you're a founder, you're coming out of like, let me solve a problem that I have as a user or I've directly experienced through the environment that I've worked in or whatever. And so you almost always have somebody else that you can kind of get that feedback loop going with. That's experienced it. So it's usually a relationship in those first 1 to 5 customers that are, okay, well, I was an engineer at that job. Let me go talk to another engineer that's a friend at the other place and see if they have that same problem.
Right.
And you iterate out from there. So it's very often because it's very rare for a customer, certainly in an enterprise, in a B2B environment, not to know you're the first customer. And so there's a level of like, you just gotta trust me. And so that trust is kind of inherent to it. And it's once you have that first customer, which is kind of how you find it is totally in the art of just how do I get somebody to trust me enough for us to try and deliver on the promise we're making to them.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Makes sense. I feel that if we're going to have a theme here comparing high tech to regular tech, I feel like in high tech, you're attracting more early adopters if you're looking at that technology adoption life cycle. And the more you're attracting early adopters and innovators at that, earliest portion of that curve, I feel like the easier it is to get past the trust because people are just hungry for the technology. So if you say you have the newest thing for X, even if you didn't have a prior relationship with them, they'll be attracted just from the fact that they could be the first, right? So not everybody wants to be the first, but when you're doing something in high tech, it can be something that opens the door just because you have the bright and shiny thing. Would you agree?
Yeah. So you pointed to in kind of the introduction, like I've spent most of the last uh, 3 years, 4 years in blockchain. And then kind of a lot of the last 6 months and even kind of leading in and through that kind of blockchain adventure, a lot of the artificial intelligence, because those kind of the two big early adopter technologies that have, captured the buzzwords of the last few years in terms of early stage technology has been like, blockchain, artificial intelligence.
Right.
And so identifying kind of the early adopter crowd when you're in it is a little easier because you can, it's venture capitalists and you kind of look at, okay, who are the venture capital people funding and who do they work with, and what are the enterprises that they're helping create through that venture capital funding. Those companies, as they get Series A, Series B in terms of the amount of money they've raised, now have something that looks like a budget. And so it's like, okay, does a blockchain, artificial intelligence, does a technology widget that I built or can build solve a problem for a venture-backed company? Because the consumer on the other side of the table of that is doing the same thing, and or is very recently removed from having done this. Like I needed somebody to be an early adopter of my piece of technology, and they're venture capital backed. They're almost technology companies by definition, so you spend a lot less time on education of what's a data ontology and how does my data ontology match up with a semantic thing. Like, there's tons of people in very large, sophisticated organizations with the title of chief innovation officer, chief technology officer, don't even know what those things are.
Right.
A venture capital backed CTO knows exactly what as a sales dude, he's like, I know way more about this than you do. And so it's a totally different feedback loop. So it's kind of getting into, when you need those first really early adopters, there's a level of, do I go to the big sophisticated enterprise and try to hunt the whale, which can make sense. And there's ways to identify who the early adopters are in those big deep markets, based on how they blog and how they present the brand and who they are. Somebody at Google knows exactly what the heck you're talking about. Somebody at Facebook knows what you're talking about. And those are big, huge enterprise companies now.
Right.
But it's kind of other, who's 2-3 years ahead of me of growth, and they've raised some money so they can pay. So I'm not running into you have a no budget problem with my fellow startups. It's I can solve a problem for you. You guys have enough money to pay for problems to be solved. Matching up, and it's like that's kind of been a hack that I've used to get traction, especially with this early stage fund, is find kind of maturing, growing companies that are fresh out of the cradle. So they have empathy for me who's in the cradle, and that level of understanding kind of really shortens the education cycle.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Hey, I'm getting parched over here. So you chose the beverage for today. Do you want to tell us a thing or two about it before we crack them open? I've honestly never had, I don't think I've ever had a Guinness before, so I thought it was fitting.
Oh, this is just glorious. I'm like, you're a hyper late adopter on this thing, because as you'll notice, it'll say somewhere around here 1759, so it's been around for a while.
Yeah.
So I'm a very avid Guinness fan. People say it's a meal in the can. They're wrong. It's actually the lightest beer. It's very healthy in terms of nutrients. So I tell people it's not beer, it's stout. And therefore it's not carbonated. That's kind of the key differentiator between beer and a stout. And then it's got actual nutrients in it and less calories than beer. So it's for as early in the day as we both are. We're past legal drinking hours, so we're good. But we might be a little early in the day. We're having a beer lunch. That's it. The key here is the pour.
100%. Well, cheers to that, Scott. Yeah, we both have glasses with us. Oh, you're fizzing over. Okay, we're going to dump into the glass.
You just dump it straight down. Total vertical, unlike beer. Because again, it's not carbonated.
Right. Okay. Fantastic. And when I went to the liquor store, they didn't sell singles. I had to buy 8. So today is going to be that kind of day that I think is going to have to end very shortly after this podcast. We're recording this at exactly 12 p.m. noon Winnipeg time, your Toronto time. So you're an hour in the future, but early start for us both. So cheers and thanks for having this chat, Scott.
As the Irish would say, sláinte, which is health in like some version of Gaelic. So sláinte.
Sláinte.
Mother's milk.
Phenomenal. So I wanted to ask you, you alluded to it, being the user, selling to a warm market versus a cold market, about these kind of topics. So you can sell to a market that you know nothing about and you can learn. And I know you've done that in your career where you're not the user. You're coming in it from an outside perspective. You don't have a partner or co-founder who's from the industry. And you've also been in the spot where either yourself or someone you're very close with on a startup team has deep domain knowledge, likely as the person that is intended or was intended to actually use the product. Do you have a real bias in terms of which, should entrepreneurs be trying to steer one way or the other way? What are the advantages of being the user and how do you think about that?
So there's pros and cons of both of let's say our founding team has domain expertise and our founding team has no domain expertise in terms of knowing the business of their target user. And I'm sure if we were doing kind of venture capital history, we could show great examples of both, where it's like, oh, yeah, they knew nothing and now they dominate that industry, or
right.
Because they lived it and breathed it before starting their company. They knew what they're doing and they dominated. The advantage of knowing nothing, so kind of the Jon Snow, nothing meme, is you don't come at it with biases. So you really trying to learn and understand the problem because you've not lived it. You don't have any scar tissue. You don't have any past history of, I had to solve that problem with a spreadsheet and I do it this way. And, you come at it with this kind of very blank learner's mentality, which from that perspective, there's a much higher probability, I think, of you finding a really unique solution. So you can find something really differentiated, something really novel, because you don't have you're looking for the clue. You don't have a clue. You're not trying to, you're not in this traps and biases of your past history. And so I think there's a lot more risk there, but like when there's a lot more risk, there's a lot more upside. So there's a bigger chance that you can find kind of a totally novel product that blows you can create that kind of monopoly in that niche of, I built the only product that does that because I came at the industry problem or the user problem with kind of a blank slate. And then the opposite advantage of that I've done the job of my user. I've built companies in the space already or operated companies in the space already, is you have a playbook. So you have all these biases that if you really,
right.
I don't have to do like that type of user discovery. I need to figure out how do I take that problem that I understand really, really well and map it to the technology, and then verify that I've got the right tool in front of what used to be me as a user, without kind of the bias that kind of goes in that of like it's my baby. So you can accelerate a lot faster with domain knowledge because you'll have relationships, you'll have kind of an innate and deep understanding of the job works or the industry works. And so you de-risk the company a lot. So like there's a risk reward trade-off for those two different scenarios. And it really depends on who you are. Obviously, like I think, as you get, part of the reason I have more experience than you is because I'm older than you. Like, and it's like as you get older, more experience and more wise, you can lean on those playbooks, and lean on the Rolodex, and lean on I've been there and done that type stuff. Whereas like if I'm a 24-year-old founder, you don't know what you don't know. Just don't do it. and so going at something where it's like taking a blank page approach to, I have no idea how biotechnology works. Dive in.
Right.
Yeah. That's you want to go solve COVID, solve it without but without any kind of bias. It's probably not a bad way to go at it, but also having run a lab before wouldn't be a bad start either.
Yeah, no doubt. It's almost like you want to know enough to think you'll be successful, but you want to not know enough that you don't know how you could fail. So there's a certain amount of ignorance is bliss, I suppose. And ultimately, I think being curious is the way to make sure that you're successful in both situations, right? Even if you come from the industry, even if you are the user, other users operate different. I agree that you're de-risking it because all the little things that you don't know, and a startup, I think, is 100% built on assumptions. You're assuming that someone will have value in X. You are assuming that you can distribute something effectively to Y. It's all assumptions that you're testing. It's impossible to test every single assumption at the right time. So to know yourself as a user, and ideally a unique user, to have that correct perspective. So it's very cool to hear. There's no right or wrong way. It's just be aware of what the pros and cons are based on who you are. And I've always looked at it as, if you're not from the industry, it's probably even more important that you be extremely customer centric. I think you have to be extremely customer centric in both spots. But you don't have yourself to fall back on, so you don't have that crutch. Go ahead.
And I think that's one of the reasons I was reaching out is because the current project I'm working on is I know a little bit about the market. We have a little bit of other people in the company that know enough about the market to be dangerous and have some relationships to kind of get us, those first 4 or 5 conversations, kind of a warm and friendly way. And we have enough product. Like, it's not what should we build, how should we build it type scenario. It's how do we frame what we built and what we have, and then there's a level of customization and configuration that goes with it. So it's trying to do this match. So it is trying to implement, a better structure, better science, kind of the better science, better engineering around the customer conversation, the more perspective, the customer discovery conversation of what the problem is and getting into it, is pushing towards a structure around that to go like, we have something, we kind of know what we know what the high level problems are. How do we kind of intersect down to the kind of a more of a user level? Here's how our tool can help that user do their job, and then translate that up and try to get, so kind of using their classic lean startup methodology of user interviews, and then kind of having to mature, like iterating against your live product. We're in this weird space in between that I don't have a playbook for. So I'm trying to figure it out. Like, how do I map kind of better user interviewing into this kind of more mature enterprise sales environment that we're in? It's been an interesting challenge, and I think it's one of the first time I'm really conscious of being in this situation where it's like, I have some software that I know can do the job. I even have some customer references that can say to do the job, but the way that we're framing and discussing how it does that sounds like, doesn't sound differentiated. It's, yeah, we help you move, it's we're in the supply chain sector. We help you move the trucks better, faster, and cheaper. Okay, yeah.
Right.
So does every other piece of software that's ever been sold to us. How does yours work? Well, and you get down these rabbit holes that are hard versus like if you're doing better, I was doing it, particularly as a salesperson, better customer discovery. I'd go like, oh, here's how we plug it, here's how we can match up that value proposition, that user proposition much more effectively.
So you guys have some sort of technology or product built, right? I don't know if I want to call it an MVP, but you have some product at Clear AI and you're still trying to figure out the best market fit, right? You've done some pilot projects. You've gone to some companies and you've done some things with their data. So you're not completely new, but it seems like you're still trying to find the right package, the right value proposition, the right way to frame it. And this kind of brings to the question of what is the difference between pitching something that is considered quite high tech, all these buzzwords, it's the newest thing, it's using the latest tech, versus pitching something that is just a regular level tech. I don't know how to describe it, but I would just say something that's more standard. Like if you're doing a two-sided marketplace right now, there might be some machine learning, there might be some AI, but I would say the core business there, it's not a highly technical solution. It's not high tech. Whereas if you're doing something where AI is your bread and butter, you guys are building a neural AI platform, that sounds like it's at the forefront of high tech. I'm wondering what the difference is between pitching the two. And I spent a bunch of time thinking about it. And like the only thing that I can come up with is I think if you're pitching something in high tech and you're figuring out your first customers and you're going through that discovery and you're doing it without having an ego, just learning, I think that if you're doing something in high tech, you're more pointing in a particular direction. You're kind of saying, we're playing in this sandbox and we want to know what this needs to do for you to like it. As opposed to, I would say, a lower tech startup, I think you might understand your use case better, but you don't know the full product yet. It seems like in your situation, you don't know the use case yet, but you already know the technology. Do you see any differences between the two?
Yeah, I think you're peeling at the nuance there quite well. Of we kind of know what the articulated vision of the product is, and we have the raw material of the technology to achieve that, because it's been used in other market segments before. Principally in high frequency trading is a good example of this. How the stock market works. It's mostly robots, and those robots are machine learning, AI powered things that says when the price goes up, we do this. When the price goes down, we do this. And so there's a lot of that similarity. We got all, so if I use that kind of mature market that understands how to buy that type of technology really well, what the value of that technology is really well, and we compare it to trucking, which is kind of the core logistics thing. Trucking is a multi-sided marketplace where it's like I have shippers, receivers, third-party logistics companies in between them that essentially manage the liquidity of the products that need to go from A to B and the trucking capacity that moves them. Very similar, but totally different in that it's not just zeros and ones moving across screens. It's actual products that are moving on roads with humans. So there's a bunch of analog that's got to match out to that, because it's like some of that's just still going to happen of Johnny picking up the phone and calling Sally and going, I got a half empty truck that's going from Tulsa to Omaha. How much load do you have for us?
Right.
And there's this levels of that that's just always going to remain human, right? It's not going to be a bot that does that on the internet, although a large capacity that does. So it's trying to match like that kind of pretty mature technology stack that we have, articulating the features of it, how it gets in front of the customer. That a lot of that stuff needs to be developed. So that's kind of back to your kind of traditional medium low tech map out the workflow of the user and just put code around the workflow of the user. We got to do a little bit of that, but not, we're not too, those are like 2-week sprints type problems of how do I get the code around the user so they can go like, hey, go left, right, or center. It's kind of taking we're a back-end technology that the technology people go, oh yeah, that solves a really big, hard data problem. That's like, PhD level mathematics.
Right.
That's better than us doing a spreadsheet the way we do it now. And so it's kind of breaking that mold of, who's that persona, because the user is probably a technology person inside of the company,
Right.
but the person who's to buy it is strategic. So there's CIO, there's CEO going like, oh, if I understood that about how my marketplace worked, we can make or save a lot of money. And now I need to implement this piece of technology to get it. And so it's like we're kind of doing this dance of like, do I go at the data analytics person, or do I go at the CEO? We've kind of done mostly CEO because we've got to get this buy-in, because even the data analytics guy's going to go, you're going to touch a bunch of super valuable stuff for us, and it's only really valuable if we change our business model based on what comes out of this thing. So it's this tough dance of personas, and then tough dance of it's a high-end piece of technology that even nerds need a bit of a, how does that work? What's it really do? I'm going to have to Google that.
Yeah. It seems like at the end of the day, it's ultimately quite similar in terms of whether you're doing something high tech, medium tech, low tech. You still need to figure out what problem you're solving. You still need to put yourself in your stakeholders' shoes and go through those steps, right? And I think that's where I've seen some technical founders make a mistake, thinking that their tech is good enough just to stand on its own. That might be good enough for a few people, but I know you and I have talked about this, being able to articulate what that core value proposition is in like 2 or 3 sentences, right? How do you reliably open up the door? When you know somebody, it's a good way to get in. And I would think hopefully you learn from these first few customers who you got through relationships or pure luck. Maybe you learn something from them and you can apply it to your future customers to get in there a little bit more tactically, a little bit more intentionally. I've always seen the idea of actual site visits and getting out there to be the difference maker, actually putting yourself in that situation, because when you send out a survey, when you ask questions over email, even when you talk about things over the phone, unless you've seen this user actually doing what they do best, unless you've actually been in the environment to understand, wow, this happens so much faster than it looked like on paper. I know pre-COVID-19, you were spending lots of time going out there and you would find whatever data the company would throw at you and try to do something with it. Can you walk me through kind of the benefits of doing site visits for you and sort of how you would go about that? Did you just ask them like, hey, can I come on site and watch you? Or did you do it a little bit more tactically? How did you actually put yourself in a position to learn?
Yeah, so going on site is is hugely valuable in an early adoption cycle for both parties. So you're kind of, they get, they're trying to trust you. So that's a personal experience of the CEO and me as the account executive, or the CEO and the CEO build a relationship, and the engineers build relationships going like, okay, when they call me up or Slack me to trying to get the API key, I'm a lot more comfortable sending it over because I know who the other human is on the other end of that channel. So there's just a basic relationship building that goes with that Zoom and everything else are doing a decent job of, but it's you don't have the water cooler, you didn't go to the pub after you had the session, all that kind of stuff matters because we're humans and we're wired that way. And then there's stuff that's just easier to do in person, of like, let me show you my screen. It's like, yeah, we can share screens right now on Zoom, and I can show you how I walk through it and stuff like that, but it doesn't quite work the same. And especially when we're in this, an explicitly analog industry that is trucking and
Right.
logistics, it's like I got a huge amount of value of going to these, going to the distribution center and going, oh wow, okay, these guys got 24 docks, and they got pallets, and they got stuff moving, and they got blue collar labor doing blue collar stuff, and there's a level of communication that has to come down to the back of that dock. That is a actual work area where actual humans pick stuff up and move it around, and so there's a level of difference in how you deploy that technology, because that iPad or screen's got to sit somewhere where it's safe, seeable, usable, and it's like, oh, okay, that's why there's this lag, or it gives you much better insight to how the technology will totally flow down to the ground. Is like when you see it in live action, especially, okay, the guy in the truck or girl in the truck has got to get a signal. Okay, what's the cab of the truck look like? Is it 1960s old truck? Okay, no, we got a brand new fleet. They got Tesla like screens in the thing. Like, okay, well that's a better environment than that.
Right.
So you get much more tangible feel. And I think ultimately what it does, it translates into that is valuable from a product adoption perspective, is the engineers get more empathy for how the thing will get consumed. I'm thinking like, oh, yeah, it's not a fellow developer that's on the other end of this thing. It's a person who's trying to like, which pallet do I pick in what order to put on the back of that truck, and do that in a way where I don't crush my foot.
Yeah. Yeah. Like this just has me thinking, I don't think customers know how to teach startups. So I think that's again the problem of trusting that phone call, is they can tell you whatever, but because of those biases that they have, because of that garbage they have, because they come from the trucking industry, which a lot of people see as very traditional, although it's moving quickly and you're at the forefront of that with Clear AI. I think relying on customers to know what to tell you, how to tell it to you, what's important and what they need, I think comes with its limitations. So I think that's something extra. When you get on site, you will see things that you're like, well, why didn't the customer just explain it this way? And often that stuff's missed because they're in their routine. They're doing what they do, and they're not coming at it from that perspective of distance. They're looking at
and,
things.
and they're going to shorthand it to you. They're going to go
Right.
through like, they're going to assume you understand, and there's a level of like, well, how much do I interrupt them to try and understand that acronym and all that kind of stuff? And there's a level of, there's a practical resistance there that, there's a level of like, oh, I should have more humility and just go like, I don't know what the heck that meant. Can you tell me more? And then there's a level of like, no, keep telling me more. I don't want to interrupt your flow because you're giving me great feedback here. And I think the other piece that we've particularly, I've been grinding with from a sales perspective is, we're kind of identifying these like front edge innovative logistics companies that are reasonably, you get a look and feel for them, like, oh, that their team is going to be pretty progressive. Well, every other artificial intelligence company or blockchain company or IoT company that's selling a cool piece of leading edge technology to a logistics company sees the same thing. And they're calling on them, and they've gone through processes, and those processes have gone well, those processes have gone badly. And there's a level of, there's only so many ways you can say my piece of software will make things move better, faster, and cheaper.
Right.
And it's going to save you X and build you Y. Before they just go like, it's all commodity. AI, the bias that I think I've encountered and seen a lot of in artificial intelligence, and I've had it both as a salesperson trying to sell it and a person looking at consuming it and buying it, is like, this falls down as soon as you look at the data, because my data is not in a condition where you can do machine learning or do an advanced neural net or build the kind of graphs that we want to build because it's not annotated correctly or whatever. our data, I might have a whole data center full of data, but it's useless from an AI perspective, or it's too hard to integrate because it's sitting in SAP or sitting in Microsoft, and it gets
Right.
hard really fast. And so those biases are hard earned because if you've been in the logistics industry as an early adopter for 10 years, you've had data integration conversations and they've gone badly. It costs you more money than you want it and all that kind of stuff. And so when I show up and go like, I have this cool AI thing that I just need access to your data. Well,
Sure.
see you in 6 months when we figure that out. And it's COVID-19, so I'm not spending time trying to figure out how to unpack my data for you. Now we've created really cool solutions to that because we know that that's a problem. That's a problem for us as the seller. It's going to take me 6 months to unwind your data and make it useful. That's not the type of speed I want to move at as the deliverer of the solution. So we've like, okay, how do I turn that to 2 weeks? And so trying to break through the bias of the buyer that's very well earned of my data, my environment, my integration problem, and go like, nope, we solved that problem. Yep, we solved that problem, and trying to get them into that, out of that mindset of it's just another one of those has been really challenging because the
Right.
early adopters have heard it. They've heard the high level of like, we can reduce your operating expense, we can optimize this, and we can lift you that from every other software vendor, and that gives them this like puts up the wall.
Yeah. Do you have a challenge in getting the data in the first place? So in terms of working with a company that you know very little about, you're still in that process of building the trust between you, and you're like, hey, give me your data. I need to use this to see what I can do for you. It creates that extra step. And I've seen it from a healthcare environment where there's a lot of data and privacy and security where even the folks in my own geography were not willing to provide me with data, even if it was to be used for academic purposes. And and when I did find somebody that would give me the data, it took like 6 months. I had to get a bunch of signatures. It was a pain in the butt. It didn't have that grassroots raw innovation feel to it. It's like, holy smokes, I need to climb the corporate ladder just to see what I can do for that company. How have you been able to navigate getting access to high tech things within organizations in order to figure out what to offer them in high tech? Has that been a challenge?
Oh yeah. And a great example of what clear AI has been able to do is like we created a really compelling personal protective equipment solution inside of the UK health system. So we in healthcare, and
Yeah.
you and I have shared war stories about how trying to drive health tech and the challenges around HIPAA compliance and data privacy, all of which is like well founded for good reason. And we were able to break through some of that because we used a partnership to do it that was already sitting on top of the data that we needed to get to. And the crisis of you need to get, those hospitals need to get PPE to the front lines effectively. So they're like, okay, we're not going to run our procurement process here the way we would run it usually and have 85 committees over the next 8 years to figure out whether we should share this data or not. So we got there faster because of the crisis and partnership. So a big piece of what I've been after is kind of find like who's the entity that's already kind of managing that data, whether because of the underlying system, so they're the ERP or the warehouse management type system, whatever they are, and come in through them. But you still got to get permission from the client. It's
Right.
almost always the user's data. And correctly so, there's a lot of data governance concern. Data is now intellectual property, asset on my balance sheet. I got a bunch of compliance, regulation, GDPR, all these types of stuff that wraps around data that makes sure that I have to protect it. It's my fiduciary responsibility as the custodian of it. So yeah, navigating that is a big piece of what we do is having that conversation. How do we get to this? How do we understand it? And because a big piece of the answer we're going to give you is dependent on the data. Like I can get there in 2 weeks instead of 2 years, but I need 2 weeks to look at it and go like, can I actually move better, or can I move it faster, or can I move it cheaper? And it could be
Right.
all three,
Yeah.
but it might be only one of those three things, depending on what the data shows me and the patterns we can discover and what the AI does with that. And so that's been, the reluctance to release that type of work inside of an organization to go like, okay, we're in this crisis, even before the crisis of like, oh, we have, how do we share this with these guys? What's going to happen to our IP? Who's going to own the IP? That's a big piece of the conversation. Because that is a big piece of what we're after as an AI company. The moat that you put around an AI company is the type of data that you have access to, and how you manage it's a huge question now. And we're really, it's another piece of the differentiation, the value proposition we have is like we're really quite sophisticated on how we think about that, how we can deal with that. But it's another education process of, we can ingest the data way faster, use it way better, get a good as or better result once we've gotten there than anybody else. And oh, by the way, we have a really good data governance model. Those are all pretty sophisticated, even for a fellow AI company to understand, much less. We're a tech forward logistics company. But we still drive trucks.
Right.
That's still a different human than a tech. The CEO of Google and the CEO of FedEx have very different brains.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And you need a few different brains on the team, and that's usually what happens. And in your experiences, I want to ask you, because you're working with a lot of technical partners, technical founders, technical leaders, and then there's you, who's often in a position that is very similar to vice president business development. I'm wondering how these conversations go. I'm wondering your level of influence on how the whole team figures out what product to build, on how the whole team figures out what the value proposition is, how the whole team figures out what the system needs to do and how. I want to know your level of influence that you've had across many projects so that we don't just specifically highlight Clear AI. Who makes the decisions in these situations? Because these things are so customer centric, but if you don't have the geniuses that are doing the technical leadership, you can't get there. You also need the Scott Howard. So how do you find a balance in terms of who makes what decision?
Yeah. So, what I've really enjoyed about working with Clear is we got a pretty diverse, robust team for a startup. And so, I think it's about 27 people, and most of them are all versions of engineers, but very diverse in terms of experience, and obviously the intellectual horsepower is really quite high. So we have pretty good team conversations, but the tension there that I think is really important is my job is to talk to the market.
Right.
Who are prospective customers, partners, who are not figuring out, nope, that's actually the wrong type of customer, but bringing that feedback back to the group and trying to represent the customer and what the problem is that they either have of not understanding what we're trying to sell. And is that because, are we collectively communicating that in not effective way, or am I, or is marketing, or is technology, and what's the combination they're trying to unpack that? Is a big piece of, especially what I'm going through right now. I'm trying to find that, but bringing that voice of the customer back is always, the CEO, the product managers, the salespeople's job is to bring that back to delivery, product, or however you want to look at it, is a hugely important role. And making that tight always, the tighter you can make that communication cycle, the better. And in my experience, it's like, I frame myself as a nerd of, I've seen a lot of technology. I've hung out with a lot of engineers. Engineers generally say like, yeah, Scott, you get it.
Yeah.
I can't, to be clear, I can't do any of it. I can't write a lot of code, but if you threw up a screen of Python versus a screen of JavaScript in front of me, I could probably tell you which is which and ask you the right questions if you're an engineer. And so I kind of take the perspective, and one of the things that I think I bring is, dear engineers, if I can't translate it, we're a long way of understanding what the heck the actual business problem here is, the user problem is. And kind of bringing down like the customer voice and trying to go like, okay, how do I convert that into the engineering of, oh, we're going to need this type of API to do this type of thing. And so it's kind of doing the translator role is, especially at a startup, that's typically the CEO's job. That's why most tech, the venture capital Silicon Valley profile of the best CEOs are product focused, customer and product. Yeah, I'll be able to raise money, HR, all that. I'm maniacal about being in front of the customer and understanding the product. Like Mark Benioff can do one of the best demos of Salesforce you will ever see.
Yeah.
Like he knows the product inside and out.
Yeah, that's a really beautiful thing that you just said there, Scott. And how that's often the role of the CEO, and it's juggling both of those balls. I always feel that, it's really cool and it's a lot less risky and it's a lot more probable to be successful if you have generally the same team that's responsible for selling something is the same team that's responsible for building something, at least in part, right? So the closer those communication cycles are, the better. You don't want to play a telephone game where the customer says something and it gets lost in translation, working its way back. I can't tell you how many times I've gone out, I've taken copious notes of every single thing the customer says. And I just know that even though I shared that document, even though I went over highlights that conversation with the product manager, with the engineers, I just know something's getting lost in translation there. So I think figuring out the best way to get that understanding, I think it's really cool when you actually get the engineers to go out and do these site visits every once in a while with you, like take a developer with you. I remember one day I took my friend and my colleague Igor, and I said, Igor, we're going to go on a site today. And it was like his favorite meeting of the year as someone who was always working remote in the office with his laptop, building code in Objective-C for our iOS applications. And it's like for him to actually see the customer, number one, he learned things, but number two, it was motivating. So I think when you connect these two departments, the product department and the customer department, I feel like it connects a lot of the dots, because the thing I hate the most about a salesperson is when, at least myself, when I don't understand why I'm selling something, when I feel like I'm detached from the product, when the customer is saying like, why can't this just work in offline mode? And I'm like, I know, you need it to work in offline mode. You're working in Timbuk 4, and all of a sudden, like, it's 6 months later and we still don't have something working in offline mode. And it's like, who is not understanding that? So I feel the closer these departments can be, the better. And I also think that, the way these teams are put together, it's really important for, to figure out what you're going to do first. So in terms of customer and product, do you have any advice about how to do that chicken and egg situation? Because it's like, you don't want to go to the customer unless you have something. But you also don't want to build the full product until you've really figured out what the customer wants. So in your experience with Clear AI, but again, broadening it up because you have a breadth of new business development experience, how do you walk that fine line between building the product and developing the customer profile? How do you dance that? What I've seen is, even when it's not right, to build something is better than building nothing, even if it's from opening the door, getting credibility. So you want to have something, but if you spend too much time, then you're going to go down the wrong path and you're going to waste a bunch of cycles. Which one do you do first?
A lousy prototype is much better than a perfect PowerPoint deck. Because it's much more tangible of like, is this doing the thing that you want it to do? Oh, what's missing? So that the lean startup model as a catch-all for a lot of that activity makes a ton of sense. I'm an enterprise person, so I always kind of like, framing business problems are relatively straightforward. Everyone wants their company to go better, faster, and cheaper.
Right.
So where is there bottlenecks? Where are there frictions? Where are there opportunities that that persona of customer, is blocked, is blocked by, or has lots of friction to, or hasn't been able to unlock, and then getting some product hypotheses around that, so you can go like, is this a problem? Is this a problem that looks like this? So kind of, you're leading, so that is kind of coming at it from more of that bias perspective. I'm leading the customer versus having kind of a blank canvas view. And so kind of when you do that, you want to give them something, if it was this, iterating whether the car should be black, purple, pink, yellow. At least, like, do you want to go from A to B faster?
Sure.
That a car might be the solution to that? Yes. Okay. Does it need 4 doors? Does it need 2? Yeah, you can iterate quicker and give the customer something to go like, oh, yeah, like, if it was yellow, I'd buy it tomorrow.
Yeah.
This black one, I don't like black. It's got to be yellow. Okay, well, it's gonna. I got to figure out how to get the paint. I got to paint the car. It's gonna. I can't just give that to you right now. It's going to take me a minute, but you have something to go iterate with.
Right.
That's more tangible than, yeah, I'd like more revenue and like to spend less money to get it. Like,
right.
Congratulations, you've solved every business problem on the planet with that statement.
I think it's also tough to get in the door for that conversation too, when you haven't built something.
That's where I'm struggling. It's like, okay, like, you have a complex network as a logistics company. Uh-huh. Would you like it to be optimized? Uh-huh. You got to drill them down to how pretty fast, because it's like, especially at an enterprise level, it's like, I have a P&L. I got people who work, I got 5 HR things I got to deal with today. I got 15 customers. I got and 6 other internal VPs are all need my time.
Yeah.
So you better come out with like here's how I make you more money or save you money, and you got to drill down to the how do you actually buy it problem pretty quick. You got 2 or 3 meetings if you've built great rapport, to get into like am I buying something from you or not, type conversation.
Yeah, I like how you articulated that. It's that how do you actually buy it problem. The good thing that it seems like with Clear AI and a lot of the ventures that you've built, been a part of, and represented is I feel like you have a clear understanding that the product's not done until you have repeated customers, right? The product's never done, but I think a lot of people, they get something to the point where they feel like this is what we have, this is what we're offering. And then even when you have the founder CEO that's asking for advice about their product, they're not really asking for advice about the product. They're just providing lip service in front of the customer. Whereas, is that founder CEO actually open to, if what this customer says matches what this customer says, that they're willing to put in the time, effort, energy to change the product so it does exactly what it needs to do. And I think that's what I see a lot of inexperienced founders, inexperienced teams doing, is they'll get to a point where they feel like it's a point of no return. And it's like, it's like a sunk cost that they don't want to consider going back and actually rebuilding the product. And it's like Steve Blank said, like, a startup is an organization, an entity that's still trying to figure out what its business model is. It's in search of a business model. You don't know it yet. Like, I see a lot of words on the Clear AI website. I would imagine you guys are still pretty fluid in terms of figuring out, like, where is that? Because I know your tech doesn't need to be applied to transportation. You guys have a belief that transportation is the best place to sink your teeth in. But it's very interesting how you're navigating that. What are you doing right now, Scott, to try to solve this challenge, to try to solve the how do you actually buy it problem? Do you have an inkling in terms of how to do this? Or what are you most focused on right now in your day-to-day?
Yeah, so I'm trying to get into more of a customer interview mode where we're kind of pre-COVID, we were pitching kind of like we have a solution, we think it's a solution to this problem, validate that. We need to walk you through kind of a basic kind of data discovery and kind of a use case refining the use case relative to what's the technical status of your data and what's the specifics of how your organization is going to solve the business problem with the solution. And kind of COVID derailed that in all kinds of the obvious ways that have been discussed ad nauseum in the media. And now kind of going back into the value propositions change because everyone's got to reconfigure their network in the context of COVID and post-COVID, because you're going to have a whole bunch of trading partners that don't exist after COVID is done.
Right.
How product moves and get warehoused and all this kind of stuff, kind of, whether you do consumer electronics or food, a lot of it's going to change. And a big impetus of like how I would use this type of piece of technology, like how should I change it? Should I be closing down distribution centers and consolidating them? Should I have more of them? Should I have them close to the customer? All kinds of interesting network questions that we can help them answer with data. And so there's a level of customer discovery to kind of drill back into like, what are the problems now? Because how you look at the problem opportunity landscape in your logistics company in May of 2020 is totally different than what it was in February of 2020. And so kind of re-engaging kind of customer discovery validation type stuff, but trying to break through no one feels like they have enough time right now, chaos, trying to balance that from the human perspective of the global context we're in has been challenging. And yeah, to your point, like the website, I think we're going to iterate another website like next week. We've probably changed it 2 or 3 times in the last, this quarter. So it's, it's kind of ongoing, trying to find the language, because big piece of my feedback is the person in the market looking at prospective partners and prospective clients. It's like, a lot of what we're saying is the same thing as what everybody else is saying. So if I'm the CEO of, logistics company number one, well, I got 18 Scots in my inbox right now.
Right.
Why am I, and I've heard of 10 of those 18 companies. One of them might already be my vendor. So I'm probably going to answer that guy's email before I answer Scott's. And so trying to break through and find a differentiated message, which I think needs to come from the understanding the new paradigms of, how's the world different in COVID land? And then us getting more precise on what do we really do? The macro effect is the macro effect that, pretty much every software company in the space would pitch of like, we'll do stuff better, faster, cheaper, and, better transparency and all this stuff. Like, well, that's not what the workflow systems that we're plugged into do that.
Yeah.
We do something to the workflow system. We put some really cool math, artificial intelligence into that workflow system that needs to pop out in front of Sally in distribution or Johnny in the truck that makes stuff move better and faster, cheaper. We're not trying to build that workflow software. So it's trying to come, that back end technology sales is harder than the front end technology because it's less tangible to show.
Yeah, makes sense. As we're getting closer to wrapping up, which because I know you have a 2 o'clock and you have a bunch more beer to drink, so you better get on that, sir. So I have a whole case. This is what my afternoon is going to look like right here, ladies and gentlemen. So I'll have to send you a private after picture. But yeah, but with all seriousness, providing a bit more context, and maybe you haven't heard this story, Scott, but you've been an advisor to me for years. I don't remember the exact year that you first became an advisor to me. I want to say it was 3 or 4 years ago, though. So we're probably looking 2016.
I'm just saying it's probably just when I jumped off my last my last thing that looked like a real job when I helped exit health insurance, health travel insurance tech company.
Yes.
I think we got introduced by OK Marsden, who literally like kicked me in the pants the other day. Was like, you need to do better customer discovery. You should reach out to Luc. He's really good at that. And we were just smart enough to make content out of it versus have private conversations. So
Well,
shout out to MK.
shout out
And
to MK. Exactly.
I do think that was probably summer or spring of 2017. So.
Probably that. And I remember that meeting. Pretty good memory. I remember that meeting very well, Scott, because we met with yourself and the CEO of the healthcare insurance company.
That's right.
And it was very cool to have that sit down. And that meeting actually changed my life. And you don't know this. So in that meeting, that CEO, Robin, he had asked me what made our company special. So we were a software company. We were an agency. We thought we were doing something special, but really on paper, there was probably 10,000 other companies in the world that could say that they do exactly what we do. And he asked, what makes us special? What do we do different? He asked very specifically, Robin said, what are you guys the best at? And I could not get an answer to that question. And it drove me nuts leaving that meeting that I had with you and with Robin and some others. And basically, that was the main reason why I ended up selling my shares of our software service company, Consultica, because I didn't like the answer that we had to that question. I didn't know how to answer it. I didn't feel comfortable with the answer. And I wanted to make sure that we were doing something that if we succeed, whether we do or do not, our purpose, we exist to provide a unique and meaningful value proposition. And I didn't feel that my business partners and I were on the same page about the priority of doing that. I have my regrets about the decision that I made, but at the end of the day, I moved in a path that I felt that I wanted to only do things that I felt were unique and meaningfully valuable. And I don't regret that at all. So I have to thank you for helping open up those doors and have that conversation. What's your reaction to hearing me say that? Hearing me talk about how like a startup should really be trying to find what's unique and meaningfully valuable, how from a motivation perspective, I think it's important when you're dealing in uncertain industries with huge risks and not taking a traditional career path. I was trying to find something unique and meaningful. Any feedback? I don't think you heard this story before.
I didn't know it had that much of a kick in the pants to you. I want to acknowledge you for like taking that feedback, and that feedback can come a million different ways, but taking that feedback and then doing something with it, which most people don't take feedback and do something with it,
right?
Which is a big part of the whole conversation we're having, but important to kind of career and life trajectory. So kudos for hearing it and taking it and doing something with it and trying to like, okay, what is my actual purpose? And how do I express that in my career? It's hugely challenging. And I think you nailed it on the head of like, you're going to do a startup, in particular a tech startup, and build a product. You need to be able to answer that. You need to be working towards answering that question of what do we do better than anybody else? What does it, why is it important to our customer or user? That kind of gets into the spot like you can't take that product from my cold dead hands, and you got to be able to nail that. I mean, there's what flashed in memory is like another Winnipeg-based company I had some interactions with in the past, where it's like they're so proud, like, oh, our people are the best differentiator, and we have the best people in the world. I'm like, no, you don't. Like, on no measurable terms whatsoever do you have that.
Even if you did, is that good enough? Is that good enough to say?
And even if you had the best collection of 100 humans in the world, so what? What are you creating for your customers?
Right.
That is something they can't have, not from their cold dead hands shall you take it, and NPS scores off the charts, and your people are feeling great about how they deliver that, and that's why they're becoming the best, because they're part of the best. It's truly an outstanding value proposition. And none of which was true for that company. They had a nice environment and it was a nice little company, but it wasn't the best. And it's just like seeking that. The journey towards that is the most important thing, period. As humans in our careers, but I think it's, as a company, you got to be seeking, like, how are we going to be the best supply chain artificial intelligence company in the world? How do we get so good at that it's like everybody else is like, why would I try and build another search engine? I think Google's got that figured out.
Right.
Google was the 11th, 12th, 13th, whatever it was, search engine to come on the scene, and they figured out something about how they could become the best out of it. They packaged it, and then they did, technology-wise, all that interesting was the package. And so it's not unique IP. It's not that. It's how does the culture of the company translate into a culture with the customer that is outstanding and unassailable. I think that'll overcome whether or not we hire the top 10 people out of MIT, Stanford, and Harvard every single year who are quantifiably the best graduates on the planet, and we employ those people, therefore we must have the best people.
Yeah.
Bullshit. Absolute bullshit. But quantitatively, that would be accurate. I got the top 10 grads from the top 10 schools. They all work for me. I got the best humans. Okay.
Right.
That's a defensible argument, at least. The guys in Winnipeg didn't have the best student from the University of Winnipeg, much less MIT. So it is like, how do we create the best culture that includes our customers? That, man, Zoom's doing a great, I don't care that Zoom's got a privacy leak. I understand how privacy looks really well. I spent a lot of time in cryptocurrency and blockchain and cybersecurity.
Yeah.
They deliver the best product. And the fact that they're running around trying to give this product to students so they can use it in schools, I'm like, well, I'm not turning off Zoom next year when my subscription's up. I'm going to re-up. Because the culture that they built around, I don't care if the product experience works. I don't care that it's not privacy compliant. Nothing. I'm on the internet. That game's over.
Yeah.
Sorry, but times.
Well, one of my favorite quotes is by Adam Smith, and it's the purpose of a business is to create an environment where people can do their best work. As simple as that. So that's not saying that's the only thing that you need to be successful, but it's a pretty cool thing to put out there. Last question that I wanted to ask you, Scott. I lied. Second last question that I want to ask you right now is, you're really good at many things, one of which is figuring out how to say certain things. And I want to put you on the spot a little bit. A few things that I have loved that you've said that have opened up the door for discovery with customers have been things like, what job does our software need to do for you? Tell me what you're after and we'll make the tech do that. What is the pain point that our tech lines up to? I think when you have some of these zingers, I'll call them, it's very useful. I have my own zingers that I like to use. For example, I love to say at the end of a networking meeting, who do you know that I should know? That's a very cool way of saying, like, can I have a contact introduction? Or, when you specifically ask someone for negative feedback and you say, tell me one thing that you think we can improve on this product. It's a way to get something out of somebody. I have my own ideas, but you're really good at asking that question of seeing how a product and a business need to line up. Do you have any suggestions on that topic? Any specific things that you like to say, or any closing advice to entrepreneurs out there that are trying to figure out what is the problem that they're solving?
So this is one I've taken from my dad, and I've probably used my whole career, is shout out to Chris Howard. It's how, help me help you. And so it's trying to, a bit of that is getting the other side of the table engaged in solving the problem. It's like, great, you told me you got a problem. super excited that you have a problem. I'm pretty sure, I got a piece of tool that kind of lines up to that. But the challenge of every enterprise sale in particular, it's not, does my solution match up to a need you have? Because typically that's fairly obvious before you even knock on the door. Like, yeah, my shovel could dig the hole that they want to get dug. The the work that you as the buyer and I have the seller have to do together is to navigate your organization to buying my product to get the problem solved. The biggest problem you have is getting your company aligned to purchasing solutions. Mine, the other girl's solution. The hardest thing you have to do as the buyer of it is like get a budget, get the integration to happen, get the onboarding to happen. So it's like, help me help you is a leader getting into like, what's the stuff that you got, who are the other 5 people you got to go talk to inside your organization? How do you get the budget alignment? How do you get prioritization from IT, HR, accounting, whoever it is that's going to have to go into us getting this deal done? So it's like, help me help you, because like at the point you kind of get 4 or 5 meetings into this thing, you're like, okay, it's either I'm going to bake you off of the 2 other 3 people that have gotten down to this process, or I want to buy this. The problem now is getting it bought. So it's kind of getting them engaged in the help me help you. What do we got to do? Kind of, it's an easier way to like, who are the other people that need to be involved in this decision, and how do I talk to them? And like, what's the decision criteria you have? Like, you're going to ask them questions, but help me help you is like, what do we really need to do here?
Yeah. Companies want to be better. Companies want to improve. They want to be better, faster, smarter, safer, all those things. So there is some alignment there. Scott, do you have any plugs? How does somebody keep in touch with you? How does somebody follow you? How does somebody follow Clear AI?
So Clear AI is clear.ai is the URL. We're on LinkedIn pretty extensively. We're not on Twitter, so you can chirp us for not being on Twitter. I keep saying we should be on Twitter.
Sorry, Jack Dorsey.
Yeah, well, that's where I hang out. So you can find me on Twitter at Howard Scott J. And then similarly, Luke and I have an active conversation going on LinkedIn. I've been trying to be more active on LinkedIn. Really been impressed with how their content platform has evolved in the last year. Microsoft's actually done a good job there.
I know.
So Scott J. Howard is kind of my extension on LinkedIn, which is probably the best way to reach out, engage. I'm trying to put content out there at least weekly, and would love to be heckled and or cheered on there. Either way, I can get value out of both, and be most excited to engage with you folks there.
100%. Yeah, I just wanted to quickly note that a lot of these
we got upper overlaps. Only 14. I'm gonna have to solve that.
That's it. We got to solve that.
We're gonna get to 20 by the end of the week.
There we go. As many topics as we covered today, Scott, you and I are having a lot of these conversations off the record on LinkedIn. So I'd encourage everybody to be more active on LinkedIn. It's a way how to find jobs, partners, strategic partners, clients, jobs, like everything on LinkedIn, especially while we're all trapped in self-isolation. A lot of great people, a lot of great conversations, including a lot of these same topics we're talking about here. So again, I'm Luc Bohaneke. This is the 3rd episode of the First Customer Club. We're helping businesses solve arguably the most important thing, which is how to find, keep, and grow your first customers. Scott, I want to thank you for joining us today, and I hope we'll have many more conversations. I'm sure it won't be hard.
Let's do it. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.